Hello, YouTube. My name is Thaddeus Roberts, and I just want to real quickly touch on a single issue that I think is far underrepresented, if not overlooked entirely, in the whole debate on whether or not MAGA and Donald Trump is a fascist movement. And I think this is so very important because it is the foundational element to fascism itself. Now, I'm not saying you can't look up the other scholars on fascism and come to the conclusion that MAGA is most certainly fascist. You look at Umberto Eco, Stanley, Paxton, they all come down to this return to the mythical past. And what do you think MAGA stands for? The delegitimizing the press, like Lugenpresse, sure. Scapegoating all of the nation's problems onto minorities and immigrants, of course. Putting the dear leader above the law, absolutely. I'm not saying that those don't show that MAGA is fascist, but I think they're missing the single most irreplaceable element to fascism, the most essential foundational quality that fascism depends on. It's the engine that drives the machine, so to speak. And that is the cult like subservience to one man, total allegiance. That one leader needs to be able to dictate reality to his followers, and his followers must be subservient enough to believe whatever he says. Scholars may say, oh, we've covered that. We talked about cult of personality and we talk about authoritarianism. And I don't think those words come close to understanding the adulation that fascism requires from its adherents. For example, you can have an authoritarian like Stalin or Putin who's they're not really fascist. You can have cult of personality in presidents like Kennedy or Obama. Every president have their fanatics. But I'm not talking about authoritarianism or cult of personality on that level. Even in monarchism, the queen gets corrected from time to time. If the queen said something silly like the price of gas is $1.99, somebody in her court would probably correct her and say, no, Your Majesty, it's not. But fascism does not allow for the leader to ever be wrong, because the whole driving force of fascism is the complete deification of that one man. If he's wrong, then the whole movement is flawed, since the whole movement is wrapped around the greatness of this individual. So it's not just worship like a monarch, and it's not just obedience like authoritarianism. It is the complete subjugation and surrender of anything remotely critical or challenging of this singular leader's worldview. The movement lives inside the leader's head, so to speak. And you realize this because once the leader dies, the whole movement dies with him. In contrast, even in a monarchy or some other form of totalitarian dictatorial rule of one person, the system cannot live after the fascist leader is gone. The leader's truth has to be absolute, even if it's self-contradictory, like drug prices being reduced by 1,500%. Since there is nobody in Trump's circle or any fascist circle that would have the guts to stand up to him and say, you know, you're making a fool out of yourself when you're saying that, the error, the self-contradiction just has to be accepted. But once that leader is removed, so his worldview and all the greatness that that leader is supposed to contain is removed also. History verifies this without Hitler, the Nazis were nothing. Without Mussolini, the Italian Fascist Party was nothing. Without Franco, the Francoists were nothing. And without Donald Trump, MAGA is nothing. Yes, of course, MAGA is fascist, but I don't think even the scholars of fascism see how much of a one leader worshiping, critical thinking suspending, absolute deifying political movement whose sole purpose is to exalt Donald Trump with a fervor and dedication that you do not see outside of religious cults. The movement is the leader and the leader is the movement. That's fascism. If you want more anti-fascist content on the internet, please like this video and subscribe. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.